I love that commercial. Here is the obvious point. A message can get lost when people aren't speaking the same language, right? That's the obvious point. And the exact same kind of communication breakdown can occur when we're trying to send a message of love to another person or a message of respect or affirmation towards them. If that person does not speak the same language, so to speak, of love that we're using, the message can get lost. So, for example, it's like the old joke about a wife who complained to her husband of many years, "You never tell me you love me." To which the husband replies, "I said I loved you when we got married. If anything changes, I'll let you know." Right? It's an old joke, but that kind of communication breakdown is real life. For the husband, it may be he's completely confused by his wife's complaint. "What do you mean I never say I love you? I take out the trash every day." Right? And see, he's communicating in a language of love that may be truly meaningful to him. Love is expressed for him, and love is experienced to him through acts of service, through loving acts of service, not through words. And so, what do you mean? What do you mean I never say I love you? I take out the trash every single day. But for the wife, love may be expressed and experienced through thoughtful gifts. And so her response is, "Trash? Who cares about trash? I can take out the trash for myself. You never bring me flowers." And he says, "Flowers? Who cares about flowers? You can pick flowers for yourself too, after you take out the trash from now on," right? It's, what are you thinking about? Right? So, see, they're not speaking the same language of love, and as a result, then, a very sincere expression of love, namely taking out the trash, is not filling the spouse's love tank or another person's love tank, because for them, loving acts of service, those just simply aren't words that are in that person's dialect. And so this morning what we're going to do is we're going to be looking at some practical ways that we can choose to express love and respect and affirmation to people that we're in relationship with in a language that they can actually understand and receive that message of love. But first, what I want to do is I want to take a moment to frame this morning's message against the backdrop of this larger Loving on Purpose message series. Oh, I was just getting ready to say, our technology stuff that makes all this happen, when we came in this morning, it was like, not going to do it. So we've been fighting the screens, but this one finally has said, okay, I will do something. So that's good. That's good. So, all right, here's the overview of this entire Loving on Purpose message series. Or, some background information. Every single one of us is in relationships, right? We probably are. We should be if we're not. And whether it's a marriage relationship or family relationships, friendships, work relationships, neighbors, church relationships, etc. And it's just a given that breakdowns happen in relationships. Anybody know that one? Breakdowns happen. Yeah, life happens. And sometimes, sadly, but sometimes one of the easiest decisions that we can make about a broken down relationship is to throw it on the scrap heap, wring our hands, and just walk away. I'm done. Right? That's the easiest decision that many of us can make. But in this Loving on Purpose message series that we're actually going to be in until the end of June, we're going to be looking at some practical ways that the Bible tells us that we can keep on loving on purpose, that we can keep on moving towards relational connection with others, especially when it's difficult to keep on loving others. See, every relationship that we're in can be measured on a scale of movement towards relational connection. Every single relationship that we're in, that's a meaningful relationship, can be measured on this scale of movement towards relational connection. And either that relationship is moving towards connection or it's not. And if it's not moving towards connection, then necessarily and consequently, it is moving in the opposite direction. It is moving towards the goal of disconnection. It is moving towards the goal of safe distance. Many of us understand very clearly what it means to have as our goal in relationship, safe distance from somebody. We need to intentionally to make choices to move towards relational connection. And sometimes those intentional choices are very difficult. And so by way of review, last week, Sheldon showed us that God's example of love for us, we learned from God's example of love for us that love is a choice. Love is a choice. So let's say that together. Love is a choice. So moving towards the goal of relational connection is a choice, and you and I are each one fully responsible for that choice, no matter what the other person does. No matter what the other person does, I am responsible for the choice to love that person. And this truth, this biblical truth that love is a choice, stands in stark contrast to our natural and our cultural definition that love is not a choice, but rather that love is a feeling. That's how we naturally and culturally define love. Love is a feeling, and feeling love says, I will love you insofar as you make me feel loved, right? I will choose you insofar as you choose me. I really like this person. Why do you like them? Because they like me, right? But that kind of feeling love is really not love for another person. That kind of feeling love is actually just love for, it's love for self. Feeling love, the kind of love that pervades our nature, and that feeling love which pervades our culture is really ultimately narcissistic. It's all about me. I love when people love me because I love me, right? I love you because you make me feel so loved. I love the feeling of being loved. I'm hooked on a feeling. And I'm high on believing that you're in love with me, right? Because I love me. But choice love, which is actually the kind of love with which God loves us, is a love that says, no, even if you don't love me, even if you do love me, I am fully responsible to make the choice to love you no matter what. No matter what. And so let's read this truth together. This is our big idea. This is the key point from this morning. I am fully responsible to make the choice to love others no matter what the other person does or says. Let's read that together. I am fully responsible to make the choice to love others no matter what the other person does or says. Simple, right? It's not simple. All right, so now we can turn our attention then to making the intentional choice, the purposeful choice to love others by intentionally discovering and intentionally choosing to communicate in a language through which they experience and express love and respect and affirmation. And so I'm going to be drawing this morning's material from a very helpful book that I'm sure some of you have read, The 5 Love Languages by author Gary Chapman. In the book, Chapman identifies 5 categories of behaviors through which people generally express and experience love and respect and affirmation. These are the 5 categories of behaviors through which we will typically communicate love for others, to others, and these are behaviors, categories of behaviors through which then we also understand that people love us. So 5 categories of behaviors. And so this morning, the intention is if we can grow in our understanding of what these categories of behavior are, then it helps us in our ability to recognize what that person that we're trying to move towards in relational connection needs from us so that we can choose to respect them and love them and affirm them in a language they understand. Now, one more piece of background introductory information. Some of you may be asking the question, Love language, 5 love languages, is communicating in, some language of love a biblical concept, or is this just pop psychology that we're talking about this morning? And it's a valid question. And my response to that question is this: the incarnation itself, that is the fancy word for God stepping into human history as a human being. The incarnation itself was a communication of God's love for humanity in a language that we could understand, right? The incarnation was an expression of love language. God ultimately expressed his love for us by stepping into human history from, his transcendent, incomprehensible existence and stepping into human history as a human being so that we could experience his love for us in a way that we could understand. So I would like to suggest to you that love being expressed and affirmation and respect being expressed for others in a concept or in a language that they can understand, it's a God thing, first and foremost. And it's a psychological thing only secondarily, because it was primarily a God thing first, all right? And so, in imitation then of the God who loved us and who loves us in ways that we can understand, we too should choose to discover what it is that others around us need to hear to experience love and respect and affirmation from us. Understood? All right, let's look at these 5 love languages. Is there a slide that's coming up next? Yeah? Let's go to that one because I have no idea where I am right now. Okay. Let's go to this one because I know where that is. We're going to look at these 5 categories of behavior, 5 categories of behavior through which people around us, with whom we are trying to move forward in relational connection, experience and express love. All right, so first of all, there are people around us who experience and express love through words of affirmation, words of affirmation. So these individuals feel loved by us when they hear from us words of encouragement and approval and appreciation and compliments, right? Anybody like that? Yeah, so you can probably identify people who experience love through words of affirmation because they are the kind of people who tell you how much they appreciate you through words of affirmation. Words are really important to them. And incidentally, that is the way we tend to love others, is with the way we like to be loved, right? Isn't that what we do? If I like to hear compliments, I'm probably going to be the kind of person who likes to compliment, because I assume everybody speaks my language, right? So you can identify the people who speak a particular language or experience love in a particular language because they probably speak in that particular language. All right, so some people experience love through words of affirmation. And so this person is the person in your life who's just there. They're constantly just sending you cards. I was just thinking about you. You are so awesome. They compliment you frequently. They send you texts. Just want to let you know how much I appreciate you. Right? So you probably know some people like that. And so as you're trying to move towards relational connection with a person who speaks the love language of words of affirmation, you can make that choice just by intentionally choosing to speak words of affirmation to them, words of encouragement, words of compliments, words that demonstrate to them that you enjoy them as a person. Simple enough. The story is told of a woman who was very pregnant. She introduced herself to a group of new acquaintances with the dramatic biblical paraphrase, "Hi, my name is Judy, and I am great with child." And her husband was there, and he smiled at his wife. He looked around the group and said, "Yes, and she is also great without child." Wow, isn't that awesome? There's a man who understands the power of words of affirmation. And so now I think that everyone really has a need to hear words of affirmation. All of us have this God-designed need in the core of our building to see ourselves as lovable, to see ourselves as respectable in the eyes of God, in the eyes of other people. And so children need to hear words of affirmation from their parents. Husbands need to hear words of respect and admiration from their wives. Wives need to hear words of appreciation and affirmation from their husbands. Friends need to hear encouragement from friends. Mark Twain once said, "I can live for 2 months on a good compliment." Yeah, I can relate to that. So while everyone needs to hear affirming words, the words of affirmation person in our lives particularly needs to hear those words. They get their love tank filled through the experience of compliments and encouragement and the like. And that stands in contrast to the person who doesn't express or experience love through words. You know, that person, you can talk to them, you can compliment them all day long, but you're not really putting fuel in their tank because that's not their language of love. It's not the fuel that fires their engine. The fuel that fires the engine of the words of affirmation person is just simply hearing words that demonstrate that he or she is enjoyed as a person. So, got it? Can you think of somebody in your life like that? All right. Words, intentionally, to love them on purpose, words of affirmation. All right, second, there are people around us who experience and express love through thoughtful gifts. Through thoughtful gifts. These individuals feel loved by us when, we give them some sort of physical token that says, "Oh, I know you, and I was thinking about you, and you weren't even around. I was thinking about you." I was in Toledo, Ohio, and I saw this little dealy bob in the gas station, and it reminded me of you. If they speak that language, you're going to be like, "Oh, this dealy bob, that's number one. This is the best day of my life," right? That's the thoughtful gifts person. Right? And if you don't speak that language, you're like looking at the dealy bobs like, "Wow, thanks. This is awesome." Dustable art. Right? You know anybody like that? Just constantly giving you little gifts. So if you recognize that kind of person that you're in relationship with and you're wanting to move towards relational connection with them, you can choose to do so, just by giving them physical symbols that communicate to them, "I know you. And I was thinking about you, and you weren't even around." That really fuels the engine. And here's some just helpful notes. It's important to keep in mind that for the thoughtful gifts person, the gift does not have to be expensive. It does not have to be a diamond ring. I mean, that probably wouldn't be bad, but it doesn't have to be an expensive gift. It doesn't even have to be a purchase gift. For the thoughtful gifts person, it truly is the case. It's the thought that counts. It was the thought that counts. "Oh, you found this penny in a parking lot and it reminded you of me? That's number one. This is the best day of my life," right? It's just the thought that counts. And so the fuel that fires the engine of a thoughtful gifts person is just simply receiving, as I said, just tokens, physical tokens that communicate to them that they're known and they're being thought about even when they're not around. All right, that's number two. Number three, there are people around us who experience and express love through acts of service. Acts of service. So these individuals feel loved by us when they experience from us intentional, undemanded, take note of that, undemanded voluntary acts aimed at taking care of things that are important to them. Understand? Did you mow my lawn while I was gone? You mowed my lawn while I was gone. That's number one. Sil, he's not here. That's my next door neighbor, Sil. Just thanks, it was awesome. Hint, no. He's not here to defend himself right now. So again, you can probably identify people who experience love through acts of service because they're the people who are constantly doing acts of kindness for you, even without you asking for them. "You washed my car? Okay, was it dirty? Why did you wash my car? Was my dirty car offending you? Why did you wash my car?" And they're like, "No, I just wanted to show you how much I love you and I appreciate you." Okay, right? If you don't speak the same language, you're not quite sure what it's about. But for people who speak the language, the love language of, acts of service, that really fuels their love tank. And so you can choose to move towards that person, towards relational connection, just by finding out what it is that he or she needs. And by voluntarily, that's such an important word for this person, voluntarily. They don't want to feel like you had to do it. Not coercion, but voluntary, taking care of that need that is so important to them. There's a biblical, foundation for that. Doesn't God speak to us voluntarily in the language of loving service? Yes, he does. Constantly. And we don't always appreciate it or thank him, right? He moves towards us regardless of what we do. The cross of Christ is the ultimate demonstration of God's uncoerced act of loving service aimed at taking care of our needs without even asking us. And Jesus actually commands us as his followers to imitate him, to follow him in his example of serving voluntarily the needs of others. In John 13, perhaps the story at the Last Supper, Jesus stripped himself down to his skivvies, and he washed his disciples' feet. And the act of foot washing, as you may know, it was not some, obscure ceremonial religious practice. In Jesus' culture, it was a customary service that was provided to guests, to others, just simply because they lived in the desert and everybody walked around in sandals and their feet got dirty. It was just a practical, customary service, and it was a service that was performed by the lowliest of servants in a household. And so Jesus, we see in John 13, expressed his love for his disciples just through the loving act, voluntarily meeting their need of washing their filthy feet. The act of recognizing a practical need and voluntarily responding to that practical need. And then when it was all said and done, Jesus said to his disciples, and consequently to us, "And since I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to wash one another's feet. I've given you an example to follow. Do as I have done." Now, was Jesus meaning we need to start literally washing each other's feet? I don't think that's what he meant. I think he was just simply saying, go serve one another. Go serve the practical needs of people around you. And so we're all called as Christ followers to speak the language of loving service to others around us. But for those individuals around us who particularly speak the language of acts of service, we need to be intentional. Communicating to them, fueling the engine of their life, by allowing them to experience from us intentional, undemanded, voluntary acts that are aimed at taking care of things that are important to them. We got it? All right, acts of service. Quality time. Fourthly, there are people around us who experience and express love through quality time, and these individuals feel loved by us when they experience from us just uninterrupted, unagendaed, it's not a word, but you know what I mean, uninterrupted, unagendaed, undistracted interest. Their love tank is filled when you engage them in conversation and give them in conversation just the gift of your undivided attention and the gift of eye contact, right? And so you can probably identify these people around you who experience love, who speak the language of quality time, because they're the person who's probably frequently asking you to go out. Let's go out for a cup of coffee. Let's go for a walk. Let's do a hobby together. Let's go do something together. We just need to do something together. Or you might recognize this individual because they're the one who probably frequently complains to you, or their frequent complaint, I should say, is this: you never have any time for me. Right? We used to do things together. You're too busy. Right? You know anybody like that? You hear that kind of complaint? They're the person who speaks, the language of quality time as their love language. And so you can choose then to move towards relational connection with the quality time purpose in your life just by simply giving them uninterrupted space with you. Just give them uninterrupted space where just through attentiveness, you are saying to them, you are interesting. I'm interested in you. Make sense? Okay, so here's some practical advice. Watching TV, texting, or Googling the interweb, when you're with another person, does not send the message, I am interested in you. Do I need to say that again? Okay, all right. Husbands, TV timeouts are not quality time. Quality time doesn't necessarily have to be a massive quantity of time, but it does need to have the quality of uninterrupted and undistracted and unagendad interest. And parents, your children need your quality time. Children have this language, I think, just automatically. They need to hear you express love and respect and affirmation into their lives just through the language of quality time. And I think in the sense that most everybody is fluent in this love language of quality time. That is, I think we all experience love and respect and affirmation when just someone gives us the gift of their undivided attention. And it says to us, it's like, I'm interested in you. It's like they're listening to me. They're actually looking at me. You feel loved. I think we all speak that language. But the people around us for whom quality time is the primary language through which they experience love, just get the engines of their life fueled when they can just experience from us just open, unagended dialogue, in an uninterrupted, undistracted context. Does that make sense? All right, some people like that then. They just need some time, quality time with you. All right, lastly, there are people around us who experience and express love through loving touch. So these people feel loved by us when they experience healthy, respectful physical affection, tender touches and hugs and kisses. And I was going to add in parentheses here, but I'm not going to do it, and junk like that. But see, because that's not my language. But see, if I thought to myself, if I say that, the person who's like, that's my language, now they feel completely like stomped on. Right? So I'm not going to say it. So people who speak the language of love, it's tender touches and hugs and kisses. That's important stuff for them. I better stop now. Okay, so let's go someplace else uncomfortable. It needs to be said right out of the gate here, because some of you have already gone there, men. When some people hear the words loving touch or physical affection, we think sex, right? And while in the context of marriage, sexual touch can be an important dialect. Those are some important words in a spouse's love language, but we must be careful not to reduce this broader language of loving touch, to reduce it down to merely sex. Reduce it down to merely sexual affection. And we can recognize if we've been reductionistic in our communication. We can recognize if we've done that. We can recognize that we're not speaking our spouse's love language if we hear complaints like, you never hold my hand without sexpectations. You never hug me, you never put your arm around me, you never kiss me, you never give me a back rub without sexpectations. And I won't ask the question. This is what I know. I know that there is no one here that has ever done that, but there are slobs out there who have done that. There are people out there. It's true. I know it's hard to believe. All right? So some of us need to be careful that we don't fall into the trap of reducing an entire vocabulary of healthy, respectful, loving touch down to one word: sex. All right, people who experience emotional connection through loving touch have their love tanks filled through a much broader vocabulary of healthy, respectful, pure, non-sexualized, loving touch. I do need to hear say, got it. Got it. Okay. So this is an example from the life of Jesus, and I think one of the most powerful biblical examples of loving touch was demonstrated by Jesus in Mark chapter 1, where we're told this: there was a man with leprosy who came and knelt in front of Jesus, begging to be healed. And this is what the man said: "If you are willing, you can heal me and make me clean." Listen to what Jesus did. Moved with compassion, Jesus reached out and touched him. "I am willing," he said, "be healed." And the man was healed of leprosy. Jesus reached out and touched him. So a question to think about is, did Jesus have to touch this man with this, horrible condition in his life? Did he have to touch him to heal him? No, he didn't. Jesus could have stood back at a safe distance and yelled, "Be healed, but just don't come anywhere near me, because this leprosy deal really creeps me out. It's kind of repulsive." Right? Jesus didn't do that because Jesus was concerned about healing more than the man's physical pain. Jesus lovingly touched this wounded man inside and out to heal the pain in his heart. See, what you may not know is, by law in that culture, from the day that man was diagnosed with a leprous skin condition, he would not have experienced the warmth of another human being's touch. He would have been ostracized from community. And so he probably even yelled at Jesus, "Jesus, if you're willing, you can heal me." And Jesus walked over to the man and touched him. "Oh, I am willing, be healed." That is the power of loving touch. That is the fuel. I am willing to touch you without agenda. I am willing to touch you without repulsion. That really, really communicates love. And particularly to the person whose language is the language of healthy, respectful physical affection. That fuels and it fires the engine of their life. All right, so each person, to wrap this all up, each person that we're in relationship with, every person that we are, intentionally wanting to move, or choosing to move, I should say, forward towards relational connection with, has a primary love language. They have a language through which they really experience love from you. And it may be words of affirmation as a broad category of behavior. It might be thoughtful gifts, acts of service, quality time, or loving touch. And loving that person on purpose, choosing the goal of connection with them, we on our side must choose to move towards them with that specific expression of love that they most need and most desire. So loving on purpose is the choice to communicate love in a language that is understandable to the recipient.